Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with the Apester. I am the Apester himself. And today we're going to be talking about Owen Hart. Now, before I begin, I just want to say, first of all, this is my second attempt at making this podcast. The first time around, I was talking and the timer wasn't going. It, stopped. So I kind of got afraid that I was going to keep talking and it wouldn't record it. So I just decided to restart it. Right now I am watching the timer go as I'm speaking right now, so, that's one thing. Number two, it is very hot today. Oh my god, it's like 85 degrees outside. I got the AC blasting. If you hear it in the background, I apologize. I do have the door closed, unfortunately, so the AC is in the living room. I'm in the game room, of course, and man, it is just boiling today. Whew. Oh, man, and working in a really hot environment doesn't help either. Anyway, if you did not watch my first episode, I highly recommend you do so. I basically go on to explain who I am, how I came up with the name, what got me into podcasting, stuff like that. Yeah, and go ahead and watch the latest episode, which was the Money in the Bank review, Money in the Bank 2023. It was a very successful pay-per-view, if I do say so myself. But yeah, I think we should begin talking about Owen Hart. So I have two articles here pulled up. I have Wikipedia and I have allthat'sinteresting.com. So basically, let me just run down real quick Owen Hart and who he was and stuff like that. So for those of you who don't know Owen Hart, Owen James Hart, he was born... where is it? Sorry, I have the wrong article opened up. Give me 1 second. Just gotta go back here. Okay. Owen James Hart. He was a Canadian professional wrestler who worked for several promotions, including Stampede Wrestling, which I'll get into in a second, New Japan Pro Wrestling, World Championship Wrestling, or WCW, and the World Wrestling Federation, which was WWE at the time. He was born May 7th, 1965 in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And he passed away May 23rd, 1999 at the University of Health Truman Medical Center Emergency Room in Kansas City, Missouri. Now, Owen Hart, basically, he was an absolutely incredible wrestler. Now, I was born, I was born, let me restart there, sorry. I was born 4 months after this event occurred, but... For those of you saying, how do you know how Owen Hart was a great wrestler if you weren't born? Dude, it's called YouTube. It's called WWE Network, Peacock. I have that stuff, okay? Go on Peacock, go on YouTube. I highly recommend you go and watch his matches or see some moments with Owen Hart. Man, the WrestleMania 10 match, I believe it was WrestleMania 10 with Bret Hart, his brother. Oh my God, that was an instant classic. It was the match of the night, from what I heard. A lot of people saying it was the match of the night. Absolutely phenomenal wrestler. He perfected it to a T. Let me tell you right now, man. He did flips and dives, and he executed it so perfectly. I don't know how he did it. He was such an underrated wrestler that it's crazy. Like, if he was still alive, would he be wrestling? Probably not, but... man, he was just so awe-inspiring. And it's crazy because he's the youngest one out of the 12 children that Stu and Helen Hart had. Stu and Helen Hart are Owen Hart's parents. Bret Hart is Owen Hart's brother as well. Everybody knows Bret Hart. For those of you who don't know Bret Hart, Google it. So let me talk about Stu Hart for a second. Stu Hart, of course, the father of both Owen Hart and Bret Hart. He used to wrestle himself from, I believe it was in the 40s, and he stopped wrestling, I believe it was in the 70s. And he owned a promotion called Stampede Wrestling, and he competed with all these promotions like WWF and or WWF, I think. He also competed with New Japan and NWA and other promotions worldwide. In the country, I should say, in the country. And Stu Hart in his basement had a gym which was very famously called the Hart Dungeon. And in there, Stu Hart would train his wrestlers, and also sometimes a guest would come over, and Stu Hart would be like, "Hey, you want me to show you some moves? Like, I can take you downstairs to the Hart Dungeon." "Yeah, I'm down, And then they go downstairs, and next thing you know, they're screaming their head. The guy's screaming his head off because Stu Hart has him in a crazy submission maneuver that the guy can't get out of. He is in excruciating pain. Stu Hart, of course, being very highly known for his submission moves. He was a very submission-savvy person. My God. And this is in the Dark Side of the Ring, by the way. You'll see and hear people down in the dungeon screaming. Literally screaming in pain. And you see Stu Hart, he has these guys in a hold, and he's teaching them how to get out of it, and how to put the wrestler in said hold and stuff like that. And it's crazy. The weights in that gym as well, it also had the word Hart engraved in it, which was pretty cool, which I think WWE still has some of those weights to this day, I believe, in their warehouse in Connecticut. Let me just take a sip of water. Excuse me 1 minute. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry to interrupt there. I had to get a drink of water. It is, again, very hot. Anyway, so yeah, Stu Hart used to take these guys, these trainees, down to the basement and train them. And of course, Owen Hart was one of those people that got trained in the Hart Dungeon. And of course, part of the Hart family, the 12 children that Stu Hart had. Let me see if I can go back and tell you exactly those 12 children are. Let me just look up Stu Hart real quick. He was, of course, born May 3rd, 1915. Died October 16th, 2003 in Calgary, Canada. So he was born in Saskatoon, Canada. Sorry about that. Just got a message. And let me see if that... I was going to say, maybe me getting messages is interfering with the podcast, but I don't think it is. So Stu Hart had 8 sons: Brett, Owen, Ross, Dean, Wayne, Keith, Bruce, and Smith. All worked in the wrestling industry, and their daughters, Diana, Allison, Georgia, and Ellie, who married wrestlers. So the Hart family is 100% a wrestling house. And I can tell you that for a fact because, one, Stu Hart was a very famous wrestler back in like the 50s, 60s, 70s. And he also had his own wrestling ring. He also had his own wrestling ring in his backyard, which is pretty crazy. I wish I had a wrestling ring in my backyard, if I had a backyard. Anyway, so let's just go back here to Owen Hart. Of course, we're talking about Owen Hart here and his death. Let me just go back. Sorry, I think I completely left the article. Give me a sec. I got to find the other article I was trying to... Here we go. The allthat'sinteresting.com article I was trying to open up. So I'm just going to read a little bit here. Owen Hart was a promising WWE superstar throughout the 90s, but his life and career were cut short when he fell to his death in front of a live audience during a pay-per-view event in 1999. It was very unfortunate. I will get to the pay-per-view in just a second, or in a couple minutes, rather. This basically talks about his death, but let's not talk about that right now. First, we're going to talk about Owen Hart, how he was born to wrestle. So basically, if you watch the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, which I highly recommend you go watch that, along with people's reactions and where they were when it happened, and podcasts of people talking about it, like JR's The Night We Lost Owen podcast episode. I recommend you go watch that on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts. YouTube, I think they put that podcast up too. So, and basically you piece it all together and you can get a very unfortunate, clear image as to what happened that night and how it happened and stuff like that. WWE basically had went off and said, all right, well, Owen Hart fell. He fell and he had an accident. That's not the case. There's a lot more to this story than you'd think. And it's like Martha Hart being Owen Hart's wife, it's like Martha Hart had said on the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, something went wrong. Like, there's no way a man just falls out of nowhere, like, from the rafters like that. Something was off. Like, something went wrong. Something broke, whatever. And I'll get into that later on. But first, I need to talk about, make sure I'm recording here. Yep, still recording. Owen Hart, of course, born to wrestle. Now, going back to what I was trying to say. So, Martha Hart, basically in that documentary, had said, listen, like, Owen Hart never wanted to be a wrestler. He just wanted to be a normal guy. He wanted to be a regular person, everyday person with a regular job and spend time with his wife and kids and his family. And that was it, basically. Owen Hart just wanted that normal lifestyle. But that did not end up being the case, obviously. He ended up training with his dad, Stu Hart, and yeah, the rest was history. He became a wrestler. The Hart wrestling family, now I'm reading the article here, the Hart wrestling family, or the Hart dynasty, had been a name long known in the wrestling world by the time James Hart was born on May 7, 1965. His parents, Stu and Helen Hart, were the owners and operators of Stampede Wrestling, which I don't know if I covered this already, but yeah. Stu and Helen Hart owned Stampede Wrestling, and they competed with other promotions. And Stu had been an amateur professional wrestler for years himself. Together, Stu and Helen had 12 children, 8 of whom were boys. Owen Hart was the youngest, which is pretty sad because I believe he died age 34, if I'm correct. Given their upbringing, it's not surprising that at least some of the Hart children would find their way into the wrestling world. In fact, all 8 of the Hart sons would go on to become wrestlers. But it was Bret and Owen who would rise to considerable fame inside the World Wrestling Federation, now World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE. Owen Hart got his start in wrestling in high school and continued the sport into college at the University of Calgary. However, as his wife Martha would later explain in her book, Broken Hearts, which I recommend you go read. I've never read it, but a lot of people are saying it's a really good book. Highly recommend you go read it then, if that's the case. Her husband didn't initially intend for wrestling to be his career. But as fate would have it, nothing else quite panned out for him, and he found himself training with his father in the famed Hart Dungeon, which I had already explained. It was Stu Hart's basement, where it was basically his gym, and he trained other people to become wrestlers. And something I actually forgot here. Let me go back here. Nothing else quite panned out. So basically, Owen Hart, going back to Owen Hart wanting to be a normal person. He actually wanted to be a gym teacher, which is pretty funny because gym teachers usually have blonde hair and long hair, and yeah. Anyway, yeah. So he did look like someone that would be a gym teacher. Honestly, he really did. But I guess he never ended up doing it because he ended up having fame as a wrestler. Obviously, out of the 8 sons from Stu and Helen's sons, Owen and Bret obviously were the more notable ones in the family. Reading back in the article, by 1987, Owen Hart was one of the hottest up-and-comers in wrestling, and Pro Wrestling Illustrated named him Rookie of the Year, according to the Bleacher Report retrospective. Now, I don't know if I've said this, I probably did, and I'm going to say it again. Owen Hart perfected his craft to a T. Holy crap, this man was absolutely perfect at what he did. Now, again, for those you people, you were born 4 months after the fact he died, how do you don't know how he, dude. Again, it's called YouTube, WWE Network, Peacock, get it, man. I watched his matches, man, it was perfection. Oh my god, that match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania, it was so good. Oh, He would do all these flips and dives and land so perfectly. But anyway, I feel like I already said all this, so I'm just not going to repeat myself again. And here is the rise of the Blue Blazer. Now, when he started with WWE, he started as the Blue Blazer. He came out as the Blue Blazer. I believe that was the first time he came out as the Blue Blazer. I'm not 100% sure. But let me read the article. It'll answer my question. Not long after, Hart joined Vince McMahon's WWE as the Blue Blazer. The Blue Blazer wore a mask and was a sort of superhero of the wrestling mythos. Oh man, please tell me, please correct me if I'm wrong here. During a time when wrestling very much revolved around heroes and villains. Unfortunately, matches were set up so that the Blue Blazer beat other newcomers with relatively little trouble, but was relegated to defeat against wrestling's biggest stars. In 1989, Hart left the WWE after a match against Mr. Perfect, who is another freaking awesome wrestler, by the way, who, in the eyes of McMahon, had more star power. The Blue Blazer lost the match and oh my god, I cannot speak. Jesus, I'm so sorry, guys. It's been a long day. The Blue Blazer lost the match and abandoned the company. Subsequently, there you go. That's the word. Oh my god, man, you're gonna have to excuse me. It's been a long, very hot day. Man, my brain cells are just all burnt out. I apologize, really. Abandoned the company, opting instead to participate in competitions around the world. So basically, he left the WWE and WWF at the time, and he went to other promotions. New Japan Pro Wrestling was one of them, along with some other ones. I believe back to Stampede Wrestling. I'm not 100% sure. In 1993, however, Owen Hart would return to WWE, wrestling alongside his brothers Keith, Bruce, and Brett in a match against Shawn Michaels and the Knights. And to great surprise, the match ended with Owen being the only member of his family to be eliminated before re-entering the ring to confront Brett, kicking off a family feud that would become the focal point of his career. And the rest is history, guys. I mean, after just reading that, that's it. The match, once they have the match together at WrestleMania, it was just phenomenal. It was such a great, it was like little brother and big brother, just like Kane and Undertaker. Oh, I was the better brother than you, this and that, and it was just perfection. The rivalry between those two were just absolutely phenomenal. It was perfect. Let me just make sure I'm still recording here. It says, it says 17 minutes and 6 seconds, but it says the timer stopped. Well, it keeps recording, so I'm just going to assume that it's still recording. Whatever. So they have, of course, Owen Hart, Bret Hart have the rivalry. I believe it ends at WrestleMania. The Hart brothers rivalry became one of the greatest wrestling stories of all time. In November of 1993, Bret was the top babyface in WWE, a former WWE champion. Bret suggested a year-long narrative that would see him facing off in a sibling rivalry against his brother Owen. Beginning with Survivor Series 1993, in which the four Hart brothers squared off against Shawn Michaels and the Knights, the captivating saga would see Owen Hart transform from a masked superhero to an embittered villain. And that is when, of course, he stopped playing the Blue Blazer gimmick, and he became Owen Hart himself. So he wore, of course, the black and pink, to go with the Hart Foundation, like the Hart Foundation colors. In January 1994, Owen and Bret teamed up once again, this time for a tag team championship match against the Quebecers. During the match, Bret sustained an injury to his knee, but would not tag Owen in. Eventually, with Bret unable to continue and Owen stuck on the sidelines, the referee called the match in favor of the Quebecers. Frustrated, Owen kicked Bret's leg out from beneath him and stormed out of the ring. The brothers eventually settled the score at WrestleMania 10. Yes, it was WrestleMania 10. When they went toe-to-toe in the ring. The match ended with Owen Hart victorious over his brother in the greatest career win to date. Honestly, I would say that was Owen Hart's greatest match of his career. Period. Like, seriously. That had to be Owen Hart's greatest match ever. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. Like, literally. There's no other match I can think of with Owen Hart. Like, first thing that comes to mind when we think of Owen. Boom. Against Bret Hart at WrestleMania 10. Yeah. No match is going to beat that. When it comes to Owen Hart, first thing that comes to mind. You know what I'm saying? So, from Owen Hart went from being, the way they worded this, I'm sorry. They literally worded it, quote, from Owen Hart went from hero to villain and back again. Jesus, the way they worded that was crazy. So basically it says he went from a hero to a villain and then back to a hero again. So over the course of the next 2 years, the Harts continue to face off against one another, with Owen officially making the transition from hero to a villain. Owen Hart eventually teamed up with his fellow villains Yokozuna to win the tag team championship match against the Smoking Guns and joined the villainous WWE faction Camp Cornette, solidifying himself as one of the top villains in the company. And yes, Jim Cornette is or used to manage Owen Hart, if you were wondering. Owen Hart quickly established a new rivalry in the company with Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. Hart bested Michaels in a November 1995 match and frequently reminded fans that he had been the one who sidelined the Heartbreak Kid. But in February 1996, Michaels struck back with a vengeance and scored a win against Hart, putting an end to their rivalry. Hart's villainous streak in WWE continued for another year until Owen once again reunited with his brother Bret, this time to reestablish the Hart Foundation, which would become the most hated act on any U.S. WWE show. This hatred, however, was a boon to the WWE, whatever that word means, as the Hart Foundation made for excellent villains and kept fans coming back for more. Man, this is a crazy article here. So it says it continues on. But by 1999, Owen Hart was tired of playing the villain and decided to make a comeback as the Blue Blazer. And here's where it gets pretty crazy, guys. This is when he comes back as the Blue Blazer and all that stuff happens, his death and all that. So let's see what it says here. Of course, wrestling had changed by then, and his historic costume seemed like a gimmicky callback to a bygone era of the sport. So basically, Owen Hart did not like the Attitude Era. I'm like, right now, he did not like the fact that like everything was a lot more edgy, a lot more ballsy. I believe at one point Vince McMahon wanted to have a rivalry where Owen Hart was cheating on his wife Martha, and he disagreed to it. He turned him down. He was like, "Listen, that's not who I am. Like, I'm Owen Hart. I'm supposed to be a wrestler. Like, hello, like, dude, like, do you see who I am?" So yeah, Owen Hart wasn't a big fan of the Attitude Era. He was always down on it, and Martha Hart agreed with that as well. So he felt the Owen Hart character didn't fit well with the Attitude Era. So that's when he brought back the Blue Blazer. And this was the last time we would see Owen Hart come out. We would never see Owen Hart come out as Owen Hart himself ever again. He would come out as the Blue Blazer, and of course the events took place. He passed away, and that was it. So basically, this was the last time we saw Owen Hart as himself, as Owen Hart. He was a villain. He was part of the Hart Foundation, the reformed Hart Foundation. Blue Blazer, of course, wrestling had seen the changes. I already read that. Okay. Hart, to his credit, leaned heavily into the gimmick, turning a cringeworthy revival into an endearing and entertaining performance. Unfortunately, the Blue Blazers' over-the-top showmanship led Hart to attempt the stunt that ultimately led to his death. And here is where it gets really graphic. I don't know if I told you guys in the beginning of this video, or this podcast. Sorry if I say video. I'm so used to coming from the YouTube world. Bear with me. Still learning the podcast in and outs. So there might be some stuff said that might, you might picture it and say, ooh, like, I don't want to think about that. Like, it might be graphic. So I'm just letting you know. Just a heads up. For those of you people who are, like, squeamish in a way. So at this point, this is where it gets, like, very serious, very sad, very quickly. So they were hosting in May 23rd, 1999. WWE was hosting the pay-per-view known as Over the Edge. It was in Kemper Arena in Kansas City, Missouri. The Kemper Arena was renamed. I forget the name of it now, but it actually was renamed, but formerly known as the Kemper Arena. Owen Hart was scheduled to have a match with the Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship. And Owen Hart was scheduled to win that Intercontinental Championship and become the new champion. How awesome would it have been if the stunt did not fail and he actually did win the championship? I mean, damn, like, I would love that. Unfortunately, it did not happen because of his fall, and he passed away, and I'll get to that in just a second. So, roughly 75 minutes into the WWE event at the Kemp Arena, Kansas City, Missouri, Owen Hart prepared to descend from the arena rafters as his match was introduced. Hart had performed the stunt before, which I'll get to that soon. He was to be hooked to a cable and lowered into the ring. Instead, witnesses in attendance saw Hart fall 78 feet and hit his head. A lot of people are saying 78 feet, 84 feet, a couple other ridiculous numbers. I don't know exactly the number, how high it was, but we're just going to say 80 feet. It says here 78, but people are saying 84, people are saying 78. I'm just going to say 80 feet, whatever, 80, 90 feet, whatever. Maybe 90 feet's a little high, but this is already high as it is. So, instead, witnesses in attendance saw Hart fall 78 feet and hit his head. At first, fans thought it was part of the act. They quickly discovered that it wasn't. And this is where it gets really crazy, man. And apparently, there's a quote here. "We thought it was a doll at first," 15-year-old fan Robert McComb told CNN at the time. "We thought they were just playing with us. We were really shocked when we found out that it was no joke." Some witnesses reported seeing the cable snap, while others, which I'll get into that later as well, while others said it seemed as if Hart had never been hooked in the first place, which, by the way, he was hooked. But then again, that could be a controversy too. What if he wasn't hooked? What if he just tripped and fell from the rafters? Someone has reported a snap, while others seemed that Hart would never been hooked in the first place. Some said they saw Hart's head snap backward when he smacked against one of the ring's padded turnbuckles. Very graphic thing to think about there. Very sad too. Medics rushed into the ring to perform CPR on Hart before he was transferred to Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, where he was pronounced dead. He was 34 years old. See, I was right, 34 years old. He was pronounced dead. He was 34 years old. I didn't see... So this is somebody else quoting. "I didn't see it, but from what I can gather, somebody slipped up," Stu Hart said. So this is Stu Hart talking. Stu Hart, the father, talking. "You don't get up 60 or 70 feet in the air without being properly anchored down. I haven't talked to Vince McMahon yet, but somebody was careless or missed something, or else Owen would still be here." Of subsequent investigation into the accident, quote-unquote accident, I'm quoting quote-unquote accident, determined that a subtle movement may have triggered his quick-release harness to unhitch. Still, whatever the cause, the result was the same. WWE star Owen Hart had died. This is the way they worded it. WWE star Owen Hart had died just a couple of years before he planned to retire. So that's something I forgot, actually. So Owen Hart was planning to retire a couple of years later. So I'm guessing, let's say 2001, 2002, we can assume, if he were still alive. What else is here? As WWE's president Vince McMahon said, Owen Hart's death was the worst thing to ever happen in the business to the nicest guy who ever was in the business. To this day, he is remembered as one of the company's all-time best wrestlers and performers. And that looks like that's the end of this article. It's funny because in this article, they don't talk about the dark side of the ring information. So let me go into this death a little deeper. So this is where it gets deep. So Owen Hart was backstage. I believe he was in a rush trying to get up to the rafters to prepare for the stunt. He was dressed up, I believe, as a maintenance man with a hat on his head. I believe some sunglasses as well, and he had a duffel bag. And inside that bag was his ring gear, where he would be putting it on when he gets up to the rafters. Now, he put on this gear, this whole getup, because he was running. To get to the rafters in the arena, you have to go through the arena itself. So he didn't want the fans to see him, and the fans would start going crazy and say, "Hey, it's Owen Hart! Look, Owen Hart's going up the rafters." So he obviously had to disguise himself. So that's what happened. He disguised himself, but he went by a couple wrestlers. A lot of wrestlers had said that he saw him, was in a rush. one of them, I think, talked to him, which was the opponent, the Godfather, talked to him, and Owen Hart was not, like, he wasn't feeling comfortable about the whole situation. He was not comfortable about doing the stunt to begin with. So I'm guessing, so I think it was the night before, the night before that, Owen Hart was called, or Martha Hart had been called, saying, hey, is Owen Hart with you? Like, we need Owen Hart to come back for measurements. And she was like, wait a minute, why didn't you just tell him when he was there with you guys? He was just there. Oh, well, this was something we just thought of. And the thought being that the idea that they had to lower him down from the rafters and, you know, have him make like a superhero-like entrance. Which obviously went pretty bad. Very bad. So she was like, all right. So, you know, Owen Hart went back. He got the measurements for the harness. And at first he was not comfortable with the idea. He did not really want to do it. Because, well, he didn't want to do the practice run, actually. Because he said, oh, I got it down. I got it. I've done it before. I can do it again. And I guess the riggers, I forget their names, but the riggers, they said, listen, Owen, this is a different setup. You have to practice this. We really need you to do this one time. Now, bear in mind, they had tested this with a sandbag. I think it was a 250-pound sandbag or a 350-pound sandbag, and one of the producers, I think, as well, they tested it with somebody else. They tested the harness to make sure that in the clip, the harness, make sure everything was safe. Everything was good. And Owen Hart was like, all right, I'll do it. So he practiced it. It was successful, and that was it. And they were like, all right, let's do it again. And he was like, no, I got it down this time. So that was it. That was the end of the conversation. Owen Hart left. That was the end of that. Come the night of the event, I believe they had different riggers for the stunt. Now, what's crazy about this is that Owen Hart didn't, jeez, I just cracked my knee, I'm sorry about that. Owen Hart didn't really, he didn't want to do the stunt, like he wasn't really okay with it, but he knew that he was safe, or quote unquote, he thought he was safe, thinking, like this is a multi-billion-dollar company. You would think that they would take all the safety precautions that they can. And like Martha Hart said on the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, that was not the case. So WWE, they said that apparently they wanted to get the people that rigged Sting. So at the time, Sting was with WCW, and Sting would make his entrance from the rafters. And the rigger that did it, he was a proper rigger. He knew what he was doing. And I believe it was that same rigger had went up to WWE and it was like, hey, like I really I know the money you're offering me to do this rigging job is not enough, but I'm willing to do it anyway because I have a feeling something's about to go wrong here. But Vince McMahon disagreed and said, listen, like we already hired somebody. And they did this because they cheaped out. WWE basically cheaped out on the riggers and they cheaped out on the equipment. Because the harness, I don't think it was the harness, but it was the clip that was holding the harness. The idea that Vince had was that he wanted Owen Hart to have a quick release. So that way it's quick, 2 seconds, he can unclip himself. And it's crazy because when you watch the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, you see Martha Hart, and in her hand is the same clip that Owen Hart was held up by. And the thing, literally, it's like it fits in the palm of your hand. It's so tiny. And to engage that clip, literally, you can put like 3 pounds of pressure on it. And that's it. It's opened. The clip is opened. You're gone. You're done. And that was the same clip that WWE used. Literally. And from my understanding, Owen Hart was, I guess, trying to adjust his cape. And that engaged the clip, which led to Owen Hart falling to his death. So it was not Owen Hart's fault, obviously not, because Owen Hart was just adjusting himself, like with the cape, was getting stuck with the harness and all that, and he was trying to adjust himself, and that released the quick release, and he fell to his death. The rest is history. He died. He died right then and there, immediately. So, it was crazy. It was really crazy. So Vince McMahon cheaped out on the riggers. He basically went with the cheaper option. He was like, listen, I'm going to go with this rigger who's about 2-3 years, whatever it is, experience. I'm going to hire this guy. Because the guy I tried hiring before, he didn't want to take up my offer. I think it was like 100, 200 grand or whatever to rig, I don't know what it was. It was to rig Owen Hart, but he declined. He said, no, I'm good. For that kind of money, I'm not going to do it. I want more money. But, like I said, he had a bad feeling about it, so he came back to WWE. He said, listen, I don't care how much you pay me. I want to do the rigging for Owen Hart because I have a strange feeling something bad's about to happen. I have a strange feeling that this isn't going to go right. And Vince McMahon, that's when, again, like I said, Vince McMahon was like, oh, we already hired somebody. We're good. We don't need you anymore. And yeah, that was the biggest mistake WWE had ever made in their life. They saved a couple $100,000, and guess what? They got sued for, I think it was about $18 million. $18 million. It actually, I believe, was about 30-something million, the lawsuit Martha Hart had put out to WWE. But they got her down, of course, to $18 million. And Vince McMahon tried suing Martha because she wanted to take the case to Connecticut. Because I guess, I don't know what it is, something to do with they can't have the case in Kansas City, Missouri, so they wanted to bring it to Connecticut. And they sued Martha Hart for that. And it was crazy. How could you sue the wife who just lost her husband? And you might be thinking to yourself, so who's at fault here? The answer is WWE. WWE is at fault for this. And that kind of answers the question why Owen Hart is not in the Hall of Fame. It's quite simple. Martha Hart does not want it. Martha and Oj and Athena, Oj Hart and Athena Hart are Owen Hart's son and daughter. They said the same thing. They're like, we don't want our dad being represented for a company that killed my father. Like, we want him, and on top of that, like, they're gonna induct him in the Hall of Fame for money and slap his name on a plaque. Like, no. Like, the Hall of Fame's not even like a physical building. Like, it's not even a place. And these guys decide to kill my husband, and like got my husband killed, or dad rather, get him killed, and all of a sudden now they want to put him in the Hall of Fame? No, you killed my dad or my husband. Like, you're the reason for it. If you didn't cheap out on the riggers and cheaped out on the harness and all that equipment and stuff, this would have never happened. Hell, if you had not done the stunt altogether, it wouldn't have happened, which takes me to Bret Hart's reaction, by the way, who Bret Hart at the time was working for WCW. He was on a jet, I believe, on his way to the next WCW event, where he got a note passed to him, and it basically said, call home, it's urgent, it's an emergency. And Bret Hart, of course, had the time to call home, and that's when he was informed Owen Hart had fallen, he died, and all that. And Bret Hart basically goes on to say, listen, like, if I was still with WWE, Owen Hart would still be alive because I would not have let him do such a stunt like that without me being there. Like, there's no way Owen Hart would have gone through that. He would have still been alive. So yeah, Owen Hart would have still been alive if Bret Hart had not left for WCW when he was screwed, of course, in the Montreal Screwjob, which is a completely different topic for a completely different day. But man, it's crazy. This story just goes a lot deeper. And the clip, I believe Martha Hart goes on to say that the clip was a clip that is used like for boats. Guys, for boats. this clip, this little tiny clip, something to do with boating or whatever. It's insane. Like, a little tiny clip, literally, this, like, it fits in the palm of your hand. That's how small it is. And you put, like, 6 pounds of pressure on it, and it engages immediately. So, what WWE should have done was, number one, they should have hired better riggers, more professional riggers, and two, they should have added extra precautionary measures. But instead, WWE decided to go with the faster route and said, all right, we're going to give you a quick release harness, so that way, when you get down to the ring, it'll take you 2 seconds to take off the harness, take off the clip, done, that's it, problem solved. But nope, WWE didn't want to take the extra few seconds to, you know, have Owen take the extra few seconds to take the harness off and take the clip off. But thing is, safety is number one priority last time I checked. So yeah, again, going back to who's at fault, it's WWE. And that led to Martha Hart suing the WWE for his death. She also sued the makers of the harness and the clip. She sued the riggers as well. And I believe some other people as well. She sued. She obviously won that battle. She got the $18 million. Right now, to this day, I believe Martha Hart now has the Owen Hart. I believe it's the Owen Hart fund or something like that. Let me see if I can look it up here. I forget the name of it. Let me see. Sorry about that. My phone's going really slow. The Owen Hart. Is it the Owen Hart Foundation? Yeah. So Martha Hart decided to start the Owen Hart Foundation to help. It's basically a foundation to help people in need and stuff like that. And it's something that Martha Hart decided to start in memory of Owen Hart. And Owen Hart would have been proud of her for doing something like that because Owen Hart loved to help people. He was an incredible joker backstage, which ribber is what they call it. Ribbing is basically doing jokes and pulling pranks on other people. That's what basically it's called backstage. It's called ribbing. And Owen Hart was known for his ribs. Not the food. Not to be confused with the food. The ribs, as in like jokes and pranks. So going back to the Jesus, I don't know what that was. So going back to Owen Hart's death, it was very gruesome. I mean, in the ring, let me just go and tell you just the perspectives of other people, like people watching, people that were live there. They didn't even know he died until everybody in the arena went home and found out on the news or found out on newspapers or something at the time. That's the only way that the people there watching found out. But as for the people at home, what happened was that the people watching at home, they did not see Owen Hart fall. The only people that saw Owen Hart fall was the people that were actually in the arena. And that was probably very little people, too, that saw it because, one, the ring was pretty dark because there was a Blue Blazer promo playing on the screen. And in the middle of that promo, Owen Hart fell. So everyone was paying attention to the Titantron. So I'm pretty sure not a lot of people were paying attention to the ring. You know, what was going on in Owen Hart falling. So a couple people did catch it. Yes, a couple people catched it, and a lot of people said it was like a bullet, like, phew. And it was ridiculous. Like, it was just so graphic to see. And then we get back from the promo. They after the promo, the cameras pan out to the audience, and that's when everybody at home was just like, "What's going on? Like, what is this?" And we cut to JR, who is on commentary. Jerry Lawler was in the ring tending to Owen Hart. And I'll get to Jerry Lawler's reaction in a second, but JR basically was like, "Listen, this is not part of the scheduled broadcasting. Something really bad has just happened. We'll get back to you as soon as we have an update." And on the headset, JR was getting a bunch of information. He was trying to write down as much information as he could. He was trying his best to try to like just get as much written down as he could. so that way he can give the audience, watching at home, an update. They deserve. He thought like, hey, like the audience deserves an update. Like we can't just go on and not give them an update. Like what's going on? Like why are we panning to the audience? So the camera basically cuts back, and Jerry Lawler is basically coming back from the ring, and JR basically was telling Jerry Lawler, he's like, listen, I was just reiterating to the fans that this was not part of the intended broadcast. This is all 100% real. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm going to open this damn door. It is really hot in here. Oh, let the air conditioner in here a little bit. I got the air conditioner on, so if you hear very loud noise, just ignore that, please. I'm trying to let the cold... Oh my god, the nice cold air is coming in here. So, yeah, you guys probably hear that. So anyway, going back to the commentary. So basically, Jerry Lawler was like, this is not good at all. And Jerry Lawler, I believe on an interview, he said he saw Owen Hart lying there, and this is where it gets a little graphic here, so if you can't handle it, please cover your ears. His blood, like, you can see, like, he was pale, very pale, and he looked like he had just seen death. JR can see in his eyes that he just saw death right before his eyes. Like, he couldn't believe it, what he just saw. Like, you can see, like, his blood starting to settle, like, on the bottom of his body. His arm was, like, up about 2 inches off the canvas, and you would think that, like, he was trying to get up, but in reality, his arm was dislocated in the fall. His arm was dislocated. And also his head, I believe, was elevated a couple inches as well off the canvas, as to say, like, he was trying to get up and he couldn't. And his eyes were just wide open, and he was just lying there, just lifeless. And like I said, JR saw Jerry coming back to commentary, and he saw Jerry Lawler's face. Jerry Lawler was pale, like, and he had a look on his face like he had just saw death. Like, it was just terrible. In the middle of the ring was the referee. Was supposed to be the referee of the match for what was it? Owen Hart versus The Godfather for the Intercontinental Championship, which I don't know if I said this already, but Owen Hart was scheduled to win the Intercontinental Championship. But obviously it never happened. But the referee was clearing out debris. He had it, now bear in mind, he had his hand, I believe it was his right hand, he said, on the top rope. He was kicking debris from the last match onto the floor. It was a hardcore match. He was kicking debris on the floor to clear the ring. All of a sudden, simultaneously, he felt something brush on the side of his shoulder, and at the same time, the ring rope snapped out of his hand and buckled, like, on his hand. And that's when he thought, wait a minute, like, and the rope snapped back, and that's when he thought, wait a minute, the rope just snapped. Did the rope just break? He looks around, and he doesn't see the rope. The rope's not broken. The rope's fine. But then he looks down, and Owen Hart is there, lifeless. He's dead. Literally. He's gone. So, like, and again, going back to what Jerry Lawler had said in this interview, that's basically what the referee Jimmy Corderas had said. He said that his arm was elevated, his neck was elevated, as if to say he's trying to get up, but he can't. His eyes were wide open. The blood is like just puddling down to the like his back of his body as he's lying there, lifeless. Like, it was just a graphic scene. And in the middle of the promo, while the promo was playing before Owen Hart had fallen, Jerry Lawler just had a feeling that something bad was going to happen. So he looked up, and he saw Owen Hart starting to, like, Owen Hart falling. Owen Hart was maybe about halfway falling already. And he bumped JR in the arm, like saying, hey, look up. JR looked up, and he noticed a bullet just blink of an eye. And he noticed Owen Hart, of course, hitting his head on the turnbuckle. He saw the whole thing, and not the whole thing, but, like, the last 20 feet that Owen Hart fell. He saw it. He said it was very gruesome, very graphic. It was something he never wanted to bring up this image ever again. For those of you who want to hear this his perspective, go to the Grilling with JR, JR's podcast. Jim Ross has a podcast all over the place. YouTube, Spotify, it's everywhere. Anywhere you listen to anywhere you listen to podcasts. Look up, I believe it's episode 2 or 3, The Night We Lost Owen Hart. Man, it is such a deep episode of a podcast episode. Man, man, like I was just sitting there like listening to it at work, and I'm just like listening to it word for word, just in shock. Like I was like, whoa. So yeah, the announcers saw it. Now the announcers, usually they're looking at the monitors that are on the announce table, because what they see on the monitors is what we see at home on TV. So basically they're watching, quote unquote, they're watching TV with us, and they're commentating with what they're seeing on their monitors, which is, again, what we see on TV. So he was just looking down at the monitors, getting ready for Godfather and Owen Hart to make their entrances, and that's when all this happened, and the rest obviously is history, and just like I explained. So, and I heard, too, that Owen Hart was supposed to come out last. So it was supposed to be Godfather coming out first, and then Owen Hart. So here's the thing. Owen Hart thought it was a better idea that he come out first, because that way everybody will be focused on the Godfather coming out, and Owen Hart can focus, while everyone's focusing on that, Owen Hart can be taking off the harness and the whole getup and taking all that off, and nobody will even notice. So, geez, that spit something else, sorry. So WWE went with that idea. They're like, all right, yeah, we can do that. So they swapped the entrances, and Owen Hart was, of course, supposed to come out first. But again, rest is history. He fell, and he died. So the ambulance he was stretchered in, it was said to be that ambulance was supposed to be used for Vince McMahon in story. So Vince McMahon was supposed to be hurt in the middle of the night and was supposed to be stretchered out and put into the back of an ambulance, and the ambulance would drive away. WWE hired these 2 paramedics, of course, to stretcher him into the back. And I just cracked my leg. That hurt. So as the ambulance was driving away, Bruce Pritchard, who is known to the WWE Universe as Brother Love, started running toward the ambulance, saying, hey, you gotta come back, we have something happened in the ring for real. So basically, these 2 paramedics were hired to play a role in story. But little did they know, they had to be used legitimately for Owen Hart's death. So they came out, along with some WWE doctors who were in ringside as well. There was a doctor ringside. I believe The Rock at one point was backstage, and he wanted to go out, and he looked at Vince like, oh, I need to go out there. And Vince McMahon looked at him for a minute and said, listen, like looking him in the eyes, as to say, like do whatever you want. But Vince McMahon looked him in the eyes and goes, listen, if you go out there, people are going to pop for you. People are going to cheer for you, and they're going to think this is all part of a plan, part of the act. So I would advise you don't. But if you want, go for it, you know? So I guess Rock obviously decided not to go out there. But everybody was in gorilla position watching this, and everyone was backstage crying and all that. And I remember Sergeant Slaughter, I guess, ran to the locker room where Triple H and Chyna and I forget who else was in there, were talking about their match. And Sergeant Slaughter ran in and said, Owen Hart just fell, Owen Hart fell. And I believe, I forget who, I think Michael Hayes, was it Michael Hayes? I don't remember who, ran up to Michael, or Mick Foley's locker room and said, Owen just fell. So everyone's, running to Gorilla to see what's going on. By the way, the Gorilla position is basically behind the curtain when they make their entrance. It's that room that's in there before they make their entrance, behind that curtain. When they go backstage after the show is over or whatever, or after the match is over, that's the Gorilla position. So everybody was there crying in tears, and you know, when The Rock was told that, it was The Rock. It was The Rock and Triple H that were in that locker room. The Rock, Triple H, and China. They were discussing their match for later on, and Sergeant, I believe it was Sergeant Slaughter that came in and said Owen Hart just fell. We don't know his condition, and at first they thought like, hey, he's joking because Owen Hart, like I said earlier, Owen Hart was known for ribbing people. He was known for joking around with people and playing pranks. So they were like, yeah, real funny. He goes, listen, this is serious. So he ran away, and, you know, The Rock, Triple H, China, they ran to the gorilla position where they saw everyone crying. That's when The Rock, Triple H, that's when they knew that something had really happened. If you do go watch this event on Peacock, you will not see or hear any Owen Hart references whatsoever. Maybe commentary will point out like, hey, Owen Hart will be on a match later on. I don't know. But if I didn't watch the full event on Peacock, but all I know is that the whole Owen Hart incident and Jeff Jarrett, of course, cutting a promo after the event happened, was cut out. Let me get to that Jeff Jarrett interview right now. So basically it was an interview. Jeff Jarrett was basically, listen, man, we're praying for you, buddy. Now, Owen Hart was, quote-unquote, alive still at the time. He was not pronounced dead yet. But, man, Jeff Jarrett was like, we're praying for you. And of course, Deborah was back there with Jeff Jarrett and saying, yeah, we're with you. And after that event, like after that incident happened, if you look in the eyes of some superstars, like they're obviously in shock coming out. Like you can tell in their eyes, like something, like they're like broken, you know, in tears. And that brings me to why they continued the event. So this was a very controversial thing. WWE decided to continue the event. Now let me go back to commentary with JR. So JR was on the headset processing information. And of course the camera throughout kept panning to the audience and backstage promos and stuff like that. And eventually we panned out to the announcers. Where this was the announcement where JR had to make where Owen Hart passed away. Very unfortunately so. Now bear in mind, I think like 2 matches had occurred before this announcement, the death announcement. It was after the incident happened. I think it was like a match or 2 happened after the accident, quote unquote accident, but before JR announced the death. So anyway, we had the 2 matches after the incident, and then after that we cut the JR where he said that Owen Hart passed away. Now here's the crazy part about this. JR mentions this in his podcast. This is something I didn't know. I believe it was Kevin Sullivan that was on the other end of the podcast. The other end of the headset. And he was like, all right, well, JR, we have 1 minute left till we get back on the air, and you have to address the WWE Universe watching at home that Owen Hart's condition. JR goes, okay, but I don't know Owen Hart's condition. I don't know what I don't have any information. What's going on? And Kevin Sullivan responded, he goes, JR, Owen Hart has passed away. He's died. He's dead. And we're back live in 10, 9, 8. And that's the crazy part, is that JR had 10 seconds to process the information. He had 10 seconds to process all this information, the process the fact that Owen Hart just died. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I don't even know what to say. Like, man, I can't even imagine. JR and Owen Hart were pretty close. Were good friends, and can you imagine someone telling you, like, you're doing a live let's say you're a commentator, you're doing a live broadcast, right? And you just found out your best friend just died, and you're live in 10, 9, 8, and then that, like, what do? In 10 seconds, you got to recuperate and think of what you have to say, like what you're gonna say. So JR was thinking, like, what am I gonna say, like. So they went back live, and JR was like, listen, I have the unfortunate, I forgot the wording he used, but it was very unfortunate for me to say that Owen Hart has died. He has passed away from that tragic accident. And yeah, the event continued. We had the main event eventually. Freaking Undertaker even he made his entrance, and he was taking his coat off, and he was just staring at the spot where Owen Hart died. And now, bear in mind, the wrestlers are working in the middle of a crime scene. So the controversial part here is that they should have stopped the event. Like, this is a crime scene. Like, and this is something Martha Hart mentioned in the Dark Side of the Ring. Again, I recommend you watch this documentary. Really, I do. I don't even know how to put it. It's just they shouldn't have continued the event. But thing is, like, WWE was on the phone with the cable companies and all these people they were on the phone with in the middle of all this, and backstage I heard was a disaster because like they were like panicking, like they didn't know what to do. And Vince McMahon said, "You know what? We're just going to continue the show. We're going to move on. We're going to give the fans what they came to see." You know, that's probably the only thing I can agree on. However, Owen Hart just fell and died in the middle of the ring. There's a blood spot in the corner of the ring, and the boards of the WWE ring, like WWE rings, obviously are made of like wood and like wooden boards. In that corner where Owen fell, the wood was broken. They were broken board. There was a big bump on that corner of the ring where Owen Hart fell, and the wrestlers are working in that corner. If you look really closely, the wrestlers, when they go in that corner, you can see them dipping down. It's because the wood underneath the canvas is broken from the fall. So the police should have shut this event down immediately, and the WWE should have gave everybody refunds and have the matches scheduled for another pay-per-view or maybe a Monday Night Raw event. Which, by the way, the next night was Monday Night Raw, and they had a tribute to Owen Hart. The whole show was an Owen Hart tribute, and yeah, it was freaking crazy. It was a crazy night for a lot of people, you know? Owen Hart, man, dude, like, this is just one of those things where bad things always happen to good people, you know? And Owen Hart was such a great person. He just wanted to live a normal life. That's all he wanted. And he thought WWE, he would think that, he was like, you know, you would think that WWE being a multi-billion-dollar company would have safety precautions and everything like that. And he would think that he was safe. But little did he know he wasn't. And I can't even imagine Owen Hart's reaction when he was falling. And here's another crazy part too I forgot to add in here. It's speculated that some people in the ring, in the arena, and even Jimmy Corderas that was in the ring, the referee, he heard screaming, but he thought it was like the audience, because it's a live event, you know, anything can happen. He thought it was the audience. And a rumor has it that Owen Hart was screaming. He was like, "Get out of the way!" Like, watch out, saying, "Watch out!" Like, get out of the way. Like, I don't want to hurt you. Like, imagine that your last words being, "Get out of the way. I don't want to hurt you." That's literally what he said. He's like, "Watch out," and then he died. That was his last words. Rumored. That's speculated. That was his last words. Absolutely insane. Very, 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 like, eerie. Very scary to think. Very, very, like, haunting. Just being in this apartment by myself right now, I'm, like, looking around, I'm like, oh my god, like, you know, I'm, like, scared just talking about this. Like, man, like, ugh. So, man, I'm trying to see if I can add any more input. Man, I know there's more to it. I know, like I said, a lot of people, their reactions were just, they were shocked. They were just in tears, and everybody live didn't know what was happening, and they didn't know what would happen until they got home and they found out on the news or on the newspapers or whatever the case may be that Owen Hart had passed away. Bret Hart had no idea until he had a note handed to him saying, "Hey, call home." And then here's the phone call with Martha Hart. So Vince McMahon called Martha Hart, and when Martha Hart got the phone call, she saw it was a out of area phone number. And typically that's Owen Hart calling to call home and see how everything's doing. And she was like, hey, it's Owen Hart. Owen Hart's he's calling us. And, she answers the phone, hello. And then Vince McMahon goes, hey, it's Vince McMahon. And then she thought it was a joke. She goes, oh, Owen, like thinking it's a joke. Like Owen is imitating Vince McMahon because Owen Hart, like I said, he is a prankster at heart. He likes to have fun. So she thought he was imitating Vince McMahon in his voice, saying like, oh, hey pal, I'm just calling, Anyway, so that's what she thought, and he was like, and Vince McMahon was like, no, this legit. This is Vince McMahon. Owen Hart has fallen. We don't know his condition, things like that. And Martha Hart she was like, what happened? How did this happen? How did he fall? This and that. And he was like, I don't know. Like, I'm gonna direct you. I'm gonna direct your number to the doctor, and he will call you. So he hung up the phone. The doctor ended up calling her, and the doctor said to her, and this is where in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary where she broke down in tears, and she said that the doctor said, listen, we did everything we could. Everything we could. And very unfortunately, your husband has passed away. And she broke down into tears. And Oj, the son of Owen Hart, I guess was at the neighbor's house. And I guess the neighbor said, hey, your mom's crying. Go see what's going on. So he goes over and he sees his mom crying. He doesn't know what's going on, So she cuddles up her two kids and says, and says, listen, your father has passed away. He's no longer with us. And, they all slept together in one bed. And Oj Hart, the son, says he remembers all he heard was just silence when they all went to bed. It was silence and sniffling from all the crying, and sorry, I just got a message. Sorry about that, if you heard that. He heard sniffling because, Martha was crying and just sniffling away, and she still couldn't believe it, So, the funeral, I gotta look up the funeral. Let me see, Owen Hart's funeral. So, basically, Martha Hart goes over to, I believe it was Kansas City, or the body, I think, was transported to Canada. They transported the body to Canada, and, of course, they went through the whole process, that they do with dead people and all that, and so she goes over, and they say, all right, you ready to see him? And she goes, yes. Now, this is the first time she's seeing Owen since he left the house, and I'll get to that story in just a second. So she runs in and sees Owen Hart, and that's the first time she's seeing him since he left the house to go to the Over the Edge pay-per-view, and she breaks down in tears, and she didn't want to go next to it to Owen, and Bret Hart was there hugging her and like kind of doing like this little dance, like kind of like slowly creeping up to the casket, and eventually she gets to it, and she saw, he had the same hair that she loved about him, and it's just, it was the same guy. It's just, it was such a devastating thing to see. It was her first, like I said, first time seeing her husband's body since he had left. Now, let me go to the story. So the son had a really crazy story. So the son said, his son Oj had said the last time he saw or talked to his dad Owen, it was at the airport. And his dad, now this is very haunting, but his dad said, look after your sister and your mother. And he walked off with his bag on his back, and he walked off into the plane, and that was the last time his son saw his father. And at the time, he didn't think much of it. He was just like, all right, well, he was just saying, like, that's just a way of saying, hey, take care of your mom and sister. I'll see you after the event. I'll see you in about a week or so, in a couple days, whatever. But thinking of it now, it's like insane. like, whoa, like that was his last words. Like it's like he predicted his death almost. Like it's pretty scary. Martha Hart said the last time she saw him in person was he was in a rush to get to the event. He was just trying to rush out of the house. He gave her a kiss, all that, and he left. And that was basically it. That was the last time Martha Hart had saw Owen Hart. Very, very sad situation there. Very, very sad moment. So the funeral, going to the funeral was held. Let me see here. I just got to go down the article. This is a different article. This is the Sportster.com article. His funeral service took place on May 31st, 1999, and it was swarmed by family and friends to give the legendary wrestler a deserving goodbye. The chapel was filled with tears and memories of Owen Hart as his loved ones gathered to pay tribute. With that said, here are 13 things we should know about Owen Hart's funeral. I'm not going to read through that, but WCW, ECW wrestlers attended. That's cool. Country singer Colin Ray performed Owen Hart's favorite song. Really? Jim Ross got dirty looks, and oh shit. Yeah, okay, I did say I wasn't going to read through this, but apparently I am now. So Jim Ross got dirty looks. So I'm assuming, let me see. Even though he was not involved in the incident, looking back to JR, felt that it was unfit. Jim Ross was talked about sensing those feelings at the funeral, saying that he even received some dirty looks as a representative of the company, even though he was not involved in it. So, oh, I see. So Jim Ross at the time, I believe, was like part of the creative team. So he was part of like he was up there in authority. And everybody gave him dirty looks. But I could have sworn in his podcast, JR said he didn't even attend the funeral because he had to be at an event, at a Raw taping or something like that. But to this day, he says he still regrets not going to the funeral. So, but here it says he did go to the funeral, so that kind of confuses me. So it says right here, not everyone was invited. 1,000+ fans flocked outside the chapel. I knew that one. WWE wrestlers arrived in 3 buses. I didn't know that. Hart's 6 brothers were the pallbearers. I can imagine that. The tributes by friends and family. Top government officials attended the funeral. That's crazy. All I know is that, and what I know too is that they had a bunch of limousines, and it was crazy. It was a huge funeral. It was like the president of the United States had just died. Like it was that big. Why Stone Cold Steve Austin refused to attend the funeral? I can imagine Stone Cold not attending it because I think the reason why he didn't attend it is because at the time the story. Before I even read this, the story was that, Steve Austin was heated at Owen Hart because Owen Hart, he gave Stone Cold Steve Austin a pile driver and almost ended Steve Austin's career and basically almost broke his neck. Literally, Austin was, almost paralyzed. He didn't remember where he was or anything like that, and that drew legitimate heat to Owen Hart from Stone Cold Steve Austin. So that's my guess. So let me go ahead and read this and see what the real reason is. She revealed Austin never forgave Hart for the injuring him during their match at SummerSlam 1997 and not apologizing for it. So I was actually right. Despite not attending the funeral, Austin paid tribute to Hart on the special Raw's War episode on May 24th, 1999. So yeah, Austin did pay tribute to him with the beer, and he toasted Owen Hart with the beer, drank the beer, did that. So apparently Stone Cold never forgave Hart, and I'm sure today he probably regrets it. But yeah, I was actually right, and I promise you I wasn't even reading this. Vince McMahon attended the funeral with his family, which is crazy to think because Vince McMahon caused all this trouble. Vince McMahon, the company, I should say, caused all this trouble. It should have been a tough day for Vince McMahon to be at Owen Hart's funeral, with most of the people present there blaming him for Owen Hart's death. However, the WWE champion did the right thing and attended the funeral service along with his family. He was seen shaking hands with Hulk Hogan, who was signed with WWE's rival promotion WCW at the time. He expressed his condolences to the Hart family and implied an investigation was underway to find out what caused the harness to dysfunction, causing Owen Hart to fall to his death. Martha Hart promised the day of reckoning. That's another thing there. She reached out of court settlement with WWE for $18 million and set apart most of that money to launch the Owen Hart Foundation. Vince McMahon requested to meet Bret Hart before the funeral. So I'm guessing Vince McMahon wanted to talk to Bret about the whole incident, that this was an accident, this wasn't meant to happen, stuff like that. That's what I'm guessing. After refusing multiple times, Bret Hart finally agreed to meet McMahon at a park in Calgary. Lawyers told Bret Hart not to talk about the lawsuit no matter what because they feared Vince McMahon might come wired and tried to turn the tides against Martha Hart. Yeah. So I believe it was the next WCW taping that Bret Hart had a moment in the ring. They said, listen, have as much time as you want in the ring. This is your moment. And Bret Hart basically went out there and he talked about Owen, how he passed away and all that. He got a standing ovation from the crowd, WCW crowd. So basically the whole wrestling world, this was in the middle of the Monday Night Wars back then. And WCW, over here talking about Owen Hart, a WWE wrestler, and it's freaking insane. I'm going to try wrapping this up a little bit here because I feel like this is going on a very long time. So that was the last one right there. That was Vince McMahon requested to meet Bret Hart before the funeral. So that's a nice fun fact as well. But yeah, I think that's about it as far as Owen Hart, his legacy and all that. But if something comes to mind, I'll just blurt it out. But I'm just gonna start. I'm just gonna start to talk about the ending of this podcast. But Owen Hart overall is going to be remembered as one of the greatest of all time to enter a WWE ring. Hopefully one day Martha Hart will come to her senses and say, hey, I think Owen Hart should be inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I know AEW right now is having the Owen Hart tournament. And Martha Hart is completely okay with it. And it's crazy because Martha Hart never wanted to talk about the death or anything or open up about it. When Dark Side of the Ring approached her about it. And apparently Martha Hart had reached back out to them. So by the way, the producers at Dark Side of the Ring, they reached out to Martha Hart via the Owen Hart Foundation. The little, like I said, the foundation that Martha Hart started in memory of Owen Hart to help other people in need, because Owen Hart was that kind of person. He was the kind of person to help people in need. So the producers from Dark Side of the Ring reached out to her and said, hey, we want to do a documentary on Owen Hart. And she responded and said, hey, asking a bunch of questions like, what are your intentions and all that? And, what are you trying to get out of this? What's in it for me? Whatever, all that. They're like, listen, we just want, and they basically answered the questions perfectly. They basically said that, I can imagine, I assume this is what they said. We basically just want your permission, first of all, because we don't want to just go out on a limb and talk about it out of the blue. We want your permission for it. We want you to be part of it because we cannot tell the story of Owen Hart without the wife, Martha Hart. Because Dark Side of the Ring, they cover the life and death of Owen Hart, so they go in depth. There's things that I guarantee you I didn't even mention that they mentioned. And like I said, I'll blurt something out if I forgot something, but I'm pretty sure I covered most of it, I can tell you that. But it was a really crazy event. But anyway, yeah, Martha Hart agreed to it. And yeah. So Martha Hart, going back to WWE, Martha Hart doesn't want Owen Hart in the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame, because she thinks that Owen Hart should not be represented by a company who killed her husband. And on top of that, his name is just gonna get slapped on a plaque, and they're doing this for money. The WWE is gonna do this for money. So it's really? So I do want you to sound off. Do you think Owen Hart should be in the Hall of Fame? I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Honestly, I really do. JR, in his podcast, he said that he, for sure, should be in the Hall of Fame. in that Martha Hart is kind of foolish at this point because, you know, she sued WWE. Not foolish, but I don't know what the word he used, but like he feels like she's being a little ridiculous at this point because she sued WWE. She got the $18 million. She won it. You know, like what more do you want? You know, and I think there was something else involved in it too that she got, but I know she won that $18 million lawsuit, and it's like, you know, like it's kind of offensive to us fans because like we want him to be in the Hall of Fame because he's deserving of to be in the Hall of Fame. Like he has a Hall of Fame career. Like of course we want him to be in the Hall of Fame. So, but Martha Hart is the one that's stopping it. Martha Hart and the two children are stopping Owen Hart from being in the Hall of Fame. And I'm pretty sure when the three of them pass on one day, I'm pretty sure WWE is just going to say, screw it, we're going to put him in the Hall of Fame anyway, because WWE does that, and they do it for money, and that's the harsh reality of it. But yeah, Owen Hart should be in the Hall of Fame. He was a very legendary wrestler, very big prankster, a great father. He only wanted the best out of his life, you know? He wanted to just be like a regular person. Like, he just wanted to be a normal person, just like you and I listening on this podcast. Or if you're a famous person listening to this podcast, oh my God, thank you for joining me. Jesus. That takes me to the end of this podcast. I appreciate you listening on. If there's anything missing, I'll probably mention it in another future podcast, but I'm pretty sure I covered all of it. But it was a very gruesome night for fans in attendance and all that. And man, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else because I really want to cover as much as I can here. Basically, everybody had the same reaction. Everyone was just upset about it. You know, they even frustrated. Some people were frustrated. You know, the only people that had like a clear image of all this was JR on commentary with Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Corderas, who was in the ring when it happened. He felt something brush on the side of his shoulder, and at the same time, the ring rope snapped off his hand. It's a very crazy story, and then there's fans that were watching it said that they saw a bullet, and, you know, everybody was looking up like, hey, what's going on? What's going on in the ring, you know? And, man, the controversy of the event continuing and even having Monday Night Raw the next night, like, it was just, oh, man. Very sad night. It should have never happened. If they had just properly secured Owen Hart, man, like, this would have never happened. If they hired that other rigger, or if they just didn't do the stunt altogether. They didn't need to do it. The thing is, WWE did it to like, poke and jab at WCW, like, hey, oh, you want to have Sting come down from the rafters? I'll show you. And then here they have Owen Hart coming down from the rafters, and look what it did. It cost Owen Hart his life. He could have still been alive by now if if it wasn't for that event. If Bret Hart was in WWE, he would still be alive. I'm not saying Bret Hart's at fault for it, or, you know, I'm not saying, even though I did say WWE's at fault for it, who knows? Maybe it was actually an accident. Maybe there's more to this story that we don't know. But this is what I'm giving you now. Like I said, I don't know if there's any other information. I can't, not off the top of my head that I can think of. I'm trying as hard as I can right now to think, man, because I want to give I feel like I'm missing some key points, but I basically gave you guys the full, hopefully, like hopefully you guys have a clear image as to what happened that night. Man, an unfortunate clear image, I should say. So the event obviously continued. The rest of the night had the main event. Everybody went home, you know. Nobody wanted to work, you know, after that happened. Nobody wanted, like, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on commentary, you can tell they were down. You know, like, the fans, they were quiet. They didn't, you know, they didn't care anymore. They were just like Owen Hart just felt like everyone was just still in shock as to what just happened. Like, even at the main event of the show, like, they were just in shock as to what just happened, you know, and man, it was just such a sad night. But that's going to wrap this podcast up. I hope you enjoyed it. Down below in the description here of this podcast, I'm going to be putting the link to my Facebook page. Please go ahead and follow that, and that's where you can go in and find out when I upload the latest episodes of my podcast. I'm also going to put a link in the description below to my YouTube channel. I don't upload that much on there. It's pretty rare. But if I do, screw it. Go ahead. Subscribe to me on YouTube. That'd be pretty cool. That's about it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Owen Hart tribute. And I will see you guys next time on the next episode. See you later, guys. Alright, one more thing I forgot to mention before I head out officially. There is this YouTuber that goes by the name, if you go on YouTube, just look up Owen Hart Police Report. She goes by the name Purple Sky 11. Again, she goes by the name Purple Sky 11 on YouTube. She has this series called the Owen Hart Files, and she goes on and shows you like police reports, like pictures, actual pictures of police reports from the Owen Hart incident. She shows you pictures that were taken at the arena itself. There was even a picture taken from where Owen Hart was standing, even though the picture was actually whoever took the picture was standing on top of the scoreboard. So bear in mind that the height that you can literally see the height that Owen Hart fell at, and that wasn't even the full height. That was just on top of the scoreboard. Owen Hart was higher. Owen Hart was higher up. So that's something really cool you should definitely go check out. And there's also a documentary on YouTube as well. It's called... Where is it? I gotta find it. It's called A&E Biography, The Life and Death of Owen Hart, 1999 11-16. It's not actually on A&E. This I don't know why they called it A&E Biography, but it's by Nostalgia Mania Wrestling. Again, it's Nostalgia Mania. That's the YouTube channel, Nostalgia Mania Wrestling. They make this documentary. It is where is it? I gotta find it again. Sorry. Hang on a minute, guys. Owen Hart documentary. I just gotta find it real quick. Sorry, hang on just 1 second. Right here. So it's about a 45, 46 minute documentary on YouTube. So I highly recommend you go watch that, along with Grilling JR podcast. It's on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Dark Side of the Ring. If I didn't mention that already, definitely go watch Dark Side of the Ring. If you watch all these and you put it all together, and of course, Jimmy Corderas, there's a podcast with Jimmy Corderas on Spotify. Just go on Spotify, look up Owen Hart, and scroll down, you'll find something to do with Jimmy Corderas, the referee. Listen to that podcast as well. And any other podcast or video you can find of other people reacting and where they were when this happened and stuff like that. And at that point, you can put an image together as to what happened that night, and you can get a clear image, unfortunately, a clear image as to what happened. So I figured I'd add that into the podcast. I apologize in advance for that. Again, I will be putting the links in the description below for my YouTube channel. I don't upload on it at all, but hey, whatever. I'll put it down anyway, and more importantly, my Facebook page where I will be posting latest episodes of my podcast. So again, if I forget something, then I'll just bring it up right now. I'm trying to think of things to add before I officially publish this episode. So I really appreciate your time and you listening to the podcast. I know this one was pretty long. I'm sorry. But I really wanted to make sure I covered everything. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Tell your friends, family about me. And yeah, see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.